everybody. Welcome back to Your Full Crew. I'm Dawn Zoldai, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Mike Peel, your other co-host. We've got some great articles we're going to be talking about today. First up is the Metaverse, and then we're going to be talking about a new partnership between Zipline and NASA. I'm going to be talking about the apocalyptic tech layoffs that have happened, and we're going to end the show with something a little bit happier, talking about what Waymo's doing at the Phoenix airport. We've got some great guests to talk about these topics today. First up, I got Matthew Heim. So Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer with a company called Ezassi. Ezassi is an open innovation and innovation service provider. We provide software professional services around technology scouting, technology delivery, technology discovery. So basically what we're doing is we're finding matches for organizations that are looking for technologies that they don't have the competencies to build. It's a really fun space, and I look forward to talking about it.
Well, we're happy to have you on. And we also have Maggie Schuster, friend of the show and friend in real life. So finally got you on here. Maggie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I know, I'm so excited. I co-host with John with our clubhouse, Drone Law, and of course, I've been doing a Know Before You Fly Your Drone workshops, 24 of them now with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. I'm a drone pilot and a woman ambassador for Women in Drones, and I just got on the FAST team, so I'm super excited about that, you guys.
Oh, nice.
You know, it's not like I haven't been educating everyone about and talking about drones and UAS. And then other than that, I have my own company, and I'm going to be starting to learn how to map, 3D mapping and photogrammetry, and also using LiDAR. So lots of great things to look forward to. And man, I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about your perspective on the article I'm doing on Metaverse.
Yeah,
Cool.
so I'm also curious as to why you chose it. So given your background, this seems like maybe this is a passion or interest. What's going on here?
Well, what it is I was connected with a company in California about the Metaverse, and they had asked me if I have footage of some of my drone footage, because in particular they're wanting to use some of my footage for possibly people that maybe are in wheelchairs or not able to get out, number one, to fly, don't know anything about flying, but have the experience of flying. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's why I chose Metaverse.
That's awesome. Well, tell us about your article.
So basically, the article, what I like about this particular one is that it breaks the Metaverse in 3 categories, because right now a lot of it is still conceptual. And so it breaks it in 3, and I kind of wrote notes. 1 being a consumer Metaverse, second one enterprise Metaverse, and the third industrial Metaverse. Those are the kind of 3 different perspectives. Mark Zuckerberg said that basically he sees it as the VR, virtual reality. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg has a lot of interest because he's selling the headphones or the heads.
The goggles.
Yeah,
the
headgear.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't know this until my friend in California told me. There's really 2 major competitors when it comes to those goggles. And if you don't have the goggles, you don't get to go on their Metaverse. And Mark Zuckerberg said that it's kind of like the virtual Facebook. So that's kind of ironic. It's already, they're already claiming to have a monopoly when it comes to that new industry. And then the other thing I thought was interesting is I didn't know a lot about blockchain. And I know, Mike, that's up your alley, and probably Matthew's, but I didn't know a lot about what exactly blockchain is. And so I learned a little bit about what blockchain is. And basically, for the people that don't know that, really it's decentralized and fair internet. When users control their own data, identity, and destiny. I kind of like the idea that you determine where you're going, and the algorithms aren't telling you where you need to go. I kind of like that idea. But when it comes down to those three categories, consumer is an example of that is VR experience, like going to the pyramids without going to the pyramids, and being able to see certain things. And what I liked about it is like they had an example in the article where the person's like, I got to go to Egypt and look at the pyramids, and I was actually able to do more than just like, let's say I was there in reality, I was actually there touring it. They actually had an extension of that where you could go through the walls and see the different rooms and so forth. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then enterprise metaverse, I think we're using that right now, is like the virtual meeting rooms. So I think an extension of that would be, let's say you're doing training and virtual training. And so it's, number one, less of a risk with it in regards to expense and risk. All right, for example, I was a catastrophic adjuster and I used to climb the roofs. And so you could actually go on a virtual roof, look at the damage, determine what the damage is without ever falling off a roof. And that's the biggest expense when it comes to insurance, is their employees falling off roofs. And then thirdly, industrial, the metaverse. Now I just lost my my notes on the industrial metaverse. But
You know what,
Well, that's probably like
Maggie,
digital twinning and
yes.
stuff
Yes.
around basically off-site maintenance. So we've seen like
Maggie,
that. Yeah.
I was going to say, Maggie, you know why you lost your example? Because the actually, in the flow of that article, failed to define it or give one, and then talks about it later about healthcare. Because I did the same thing. I was rereading the article. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no definition. But absolutely, we're seeing a lot of this in the drone space already with digital twins. But I would love to hear Matthew's perspective on this.
absolutely.
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing about all these different applications that Maggie was talking about. One of the interesting things that we're finding that the metaverse offers and VR offers to users is that visualization, that ability to visualize. What we're finding now in the area of visioning and visualization is that when you do something virtually or go through it visually, whether you close your eyes or you're using VR goggles or something like that, your muscles respond with muscle memory, and it's almost the same as actually doing it. In other words, you will get stronger if you virtually lift weights. You will get more agile if you virtually play basketball and go through these motions in your mind. And VR and the metaverse is offering this visualization on steroids, and it's really giving people the option. So if you think about in terms of medical applications and training for doing certain types of surgeries, the ability to really go through it several times virtually before you actually go into a human body and do the operation, or like you said, on some type of an industrial application where you have to get out in a high risk situation, you want to be aware of those things that could present dangers for you. And I just think it's really fascinating. And this is the direction we're really seeing people go, is with that new understanding of how it impacts the actual human body.
Wow. Matthew, I never even thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense, because when you think about athletes as an example, and this idea of visualization, that kind of 10,000 reps concept, and to be able to, let's take it outside of the dirty, dull, dangerous jobs and just take it onto, let's just say, the basketball court or the football field, kind of bringing those X's and O's to physical life before you go out to practice or before a game. I could see a huge value in that. That's a really interesting concept that I never thought about. Now, I did think about some of the things Maggie had talked about, this idea of, hey, before you get up on a roof, to practice finding damage, or something like that, without physically getting up there, being able to do it digitally. I think we're seeing a lot of that in the drone space, Maggie. I think you'd agree, and Mike both, because I know you're
100%.
both like, a foot, a toe each in that world. We had, Maggie, you'll remember this. We had Henze Gustav from Drone Cadets on our clubhouse with Tony Reed, and they're doing amazing things with kids. And what I love about what they're doing from a kind of a teaching about drones and STEM standpoint is the accessibility, Maggie, that you talked about. This idea that, you don't have to be in a wheelchair. I mean, you could just be a kid that maybe doesn't have a ride to the YMCA or somewhere, but can still fly their drone from their house or something because they're plugging into Henze's metaverse that Drone Cadets is creating. So, so many incredible things. But Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you right now on this. But what I thought was interesting is they were saying for kind of the full impact of this metaverse, we're looking down the road 10 years. And that really surprised me, honestly. I think we were a lot closer to that. Mike, what do you think?
I don't think we're close to that at all. So I'm going to be a
really?
big party pooper on metaverse as a marketing term. Because, I've tried, because sometimes in tech, you have to give some rope so people can actually find definition for things that are truly new and revolutionary. And the issue with all of this metaverse technology is actually none of it is revolutionary. It's actually incremental pieces of disparate technologies. And I think this article actually summarizes what is a failure to coalesce that is actually defined by very, very real limitations that each of these kind of pieces to what would be a different internet, like where they are in their development, that's holding things back. So AR, VR has hardware limitations that are a decade off that will make it sustainable for every user to use it comfortably without nausea, and for the sense of reality to actually make that muscle memory that Matthew was talking about as close to reality as possible, where the exchange between a digital twin and a real life action is closer to one. And then the other thing, so where does blockchain fit into this? Almost not at all. It's really interesting how much weight the blockchain community put into this term metaverse. I think it's because they want it to be defined as a secondary internet. But the one piece of blockchain technology that actually is useful to a three-dimensional internet, which is, I think, an easier term to understand for where this would be going, is scarcity. Like, you cannot have scarcity with our current protocols. They're actually built around copying. The thing that exists on my computer now exists on your computer. So the sole identification that a blockchain is able to create with a non-fungible token allows us to have assets in digital worlds that are truly unique. And by truly unique, I don't mean visually. I actually just mean that we know it's the original. It can't actually stop somebody from completely copying the way something is designed. All we can do is trace the original, which is actually valuable for IP and copyright on whatever this three-dimensional internet ends up looking like. And the industrial thing, I think that's a completely separate issue. I mean, that's just... The idea of metaverse implies unified systems, a unified place where all of these things are accessible. So how does Facebook have a monopoly? That would be impossible. It would have to be a shared protocol. How are there separate metaverses? That's impossible if there is going to be a metaverse. All these things are actually people branding their thing as a metaverse when it's actually just a VR experience, which is fine. That's nice. It's a nice virtual experience, but I think it's more branding than actuality, and I'm looking for protocols that actually do push this forward, because without universal protocols, there will be no three-dimensional internet. We will be kind of stuck in where we are now, and I think the reason we're actually still stuck where we are now has a lot to do with the fact that Google pretty much runs the standards around the internet through force. You know, they are a big company, and when they say this is what we think is healthy for the internet, a lot of people follow, to the point where even Microsoft's browser is based off of Chromium. And even the competitive Brave browser, which is supposed to be set up around blockchain and privacy, uses Chromium as its base. So I think that's kind of where things are. So we got some comments. Olga Aristobal says good morning, and Joel Mariel Garza says this guy is way off base. Is that me?
Right.
Who's way off base, Joel? I love that. It's funny. Well, it's funny if Joel's saying you, Mike, because this is like, take notes, everybody, because very rarely is Mike like, I'm going to take the contrarian position today. Usually that's me jumping in there. So,
sure.
But I do defer to Mike's expertise in this. This is his world. And so, but look, the bottom line is it doesn't exist really fully yet. I think even that article acknowledges it's 10 years out. It's remains to be seen what can be. There's a lot of really cool things that can happen, but as a practical matter, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, remains to be seen. So I love that there's a little bit of controversy behind it. I love that people in the audience are like throwing down the red card. That's so cool. So keep it coming, everybody. That's what this show is about. So let's maybe a good segue to transition to the next piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Matthew. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I chose this article because of several reasons. First of all, I think it's a really interesting topic. Everybody's been talking about the flying car for decades, and it seems to be such a sci-fi topic for so long. And now it's really here. Now it's really, we're working on it, and we're very close to having it actually happen. And to see also the combination of NASA and Zipline, two completely different types of organizations, which really represents a part of that triple helix in innovation that we often talk about, where you have, government, you have industry, and you have the academic side all working together to collaborate to not only work on the technology, but to work on the standardization, to work on the regulatory items that may have to go around that to provide safety. But then there are also some other trends that are occurring right now that, you didn't really think about. And you think about NASA's reason for getting into this. NASA likes to push and pull. They have a lot of really interesting technologies that they've been using for so long that they'd like to push out into the commercial world. But then again, they also like to absorb new and upcoming technologies that they may not be aware of. And this type of collaboration really provides that type of interaction for them. So I think it's really interesting to see, now NASA is really interested in M2N operations, where you have, we're really trying to figure out how we can have as few operators as possible operating as many drones out there as possible. So, so we can bring this to scale in a variety of different ways. So I just thought the article just shed light on what NASA is doing. We do a lot of work with NASA as a company, and I think it's just fascinating. And we could go on and on about what NASA is doing in the drone space, but this was just, I thought, a really good example, a good primer.
Yeah, exciting stuff. What do you think, Maggie?
I agree with Matthew. I'm part of a NASA initiative for UAS integration, and I love the fact that they're reaching out, monthly in asking the leader of the industries, what their perspective is, and they really are taking it hard. One of the other things that I love about this, the sharing of information, it used to be that NASA, remember in the 60s, they were very hush-hush about their technology. They wanted the recognition of being forefront, thinking, but sharing that information, especially quote with the Russians and such, they didn't want to share that. They just wanted the first one to be up on the moon, and it's different now. It absolutely is different now that they're open to that. And I think also the FAA is getting more and more where they want to get a feeling for what the general public is thinking, not just our pilots. but in general, what the government's thinking, what the industry's thinking, what the general public is thinking. So I think it is very, as we all believe, networking and gathering information from different perspectives is really the best way to grow and to share that information. I think that nowadays you see a lot of NDR where, oh, we can't talk about this and we can't talk about that. I think it's almost more harmful than it is helpful. So that's my opinion on it. So it was a great article. Thank you for sharing that, Matthew.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to say I learned something here, Matthew, from this article, because the symbol small m colon big N,
Yes.
I did not know stood for kind of one-to-many operations. Maybe I should have known that. I'm sure it's floating around in the scientific journals and in the halls of NASA, but it's the first time I saw that being used, and frankly, it's almost one that makes no sense. M, you think would be many, to N1, but whatever. Look, I didn't make it up, but I did learn about it, so that's really cool. And this, look, hats off to Zipline. I know we talk a lot about NASA, and obviously I'm a huge fan of NASA. Fun fact: NASA PK will be on our Dawn of Drones at the very, very end of the year. So we're real excited about that for the NASA end of year roundup with the FAA. But Zipline, man, I mean, they've been doing incredible things. Everybody heard early on all the stuff they were doing in Africa, and now, Japan, Africa being Ghana, Rwanda in particular, they're doing things in Arkansas, and now with NASA on this one-to-many. And, to Matthew's point, the collaboration that NASA is doing here, it's not really new in this kind of triple helix sense, because they've had the Space Act for a while, and this is under a Space Act agreement, which is almost like an other transaction authority, gives them a lot of leeway to work with a lot of different kinds of organizations, nonprofits, companies, individuals, academics. So really cool that they're leveraging the heck out of that Space Act for drones and for advanced air mobility. And yeah, I had another thought, and I guess my only other comment is, that they throw out the word air taxis in this article, and I think anybody in the advanced air mobility or electric vertical takeoff world, they cringe when they hear that, because it's like, we're not a flying car, like we are an aircraft, we are an electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft. And so, I think it's that whole thing with language and what to Maggie's point, in common society, people think flying cars. There's only a handful of people actually making real flying cars. I think Airspeeder is one of them, and they're going to be on this show in a couple weeks, which is exciting. But we're talking about real aircraft, and when we're talking about having people on them, we just talked about that 10-year timeline with Metaverse. Oh boy, having one pilot flying multiple aircraft with passengers on them. I don't know, Mike, if you'd even say 10 years. I feel like we're beyond the 10-year time frame for one-to-many, for what they're referring to as flying taxis. I think we're closer to that with small drones. Maybe even some of the larger drones, but we're not even there yet for that. And by the way, real quick fun fact, the FAA in their Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee report, there's a large portion of that dedicated to this idea of one-to-many. Again, Matthew brought up a great point that to make this scalable, this industry, you need to be able to do that. You can't have 20 pilots each flying their own drone over a cornfield for precision agriculture, right? You need one op center, one or two people in there flying a whole fleet all at the same time. Mike, over to you.
All right, so I just want to call out Paul Gentile from the chat saying Cam Flight here. So happy to have Cam Flight and Paul joining us. And also inviting Joel to let me know which guy is off base. But
he hung up already, Mike.
Yeah, he said, I can't take this mic. But anyway, no, on a happier note, like this is stuff that I'm always happy to see, and this is the type of progress that we need and have needed for years. In terms of what you were talking, horizon for air taxis, or anything in the eVTOL space. I actually think it's possible with this technology, if the regulation does move in the right direction, that we could be ahead of driverless cars. For one reason and one reason only, and that's because the third dimension of mobility that you get, it allows you to deconflict faster. So if we are able to get certain things right and get the people in line, this technology actually probably could be more pervasive than even driverless technology on the ground. That being said, not as much money invested in it, also not as much focus. And the regulation is tighter. So that's also why I'm so excited by things like this, because this means there's going to be an understanding on the government side of what can and cannot be done, and that's been the hardest barrier for drone people to break, is basically traditional aviation and many of the people that were employed at the FAA speaking a literal different language, even though they were talking about the same things. So I think any effort like this is only going to bring us forward.
Mike, can I point out one other thing?
Sure.
When we're talking about one pilot to many aircraft, we're not really piloting them then. It's all AI anyway. So that's why we're moving into kind of a wider perspective. It's not like, we're driving 20 cars at one time, really. It's all about, having the AI, having the patterns, avoidance or whatever. So that the sensors can detect avoidance, if something does come, veer off the pattern or whatever like that. So, I just kind of wanted to clarify that, so it's not as scary as a perspective or view as it may seem. So thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's a really...
Oh, go Matthew, you're up.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say that's a really, really good point, because, when everybody thinks about, the autonomous driving vehicle, they think of drones. They think of the drone or the vehicle itself. But there's a massive effort on the background to really coordinate all the actions and the things that vehicle has to sense when it's out there doing its thing. And I mean, that's the real work. That's the real work, is bringing it all together and piecing it together. So
we have the technology, right, Matt?
Yep.
We have the technology already. It's just a matter of inventing the environment so that it can perform.
Yeah, simulating the environment and making sure that we don't have that left turn issue. But the interesting thing about the air versus the roads, the roads are almost unregulated, except for, you have to get a driver's license, you have to understand and obey signals. Up there, because there isn't a lot of activity within that space except for on landing strips, we could see an acceleration because of the fact that it's a blank slate right now. There's so much more that we can do with it from a regulatory perspective to accelerate the technology development and the actual realization of that happening in our lifetime. So but the plans, the seeds have been planted, and I'm just really interested to see how this plays out.
That's why the metaverse is so important, because we can practice on the metaverse, and then we can real lifetime when the technology catches up to the environment.
Whether or not Mike agrees. Whether or not Mike agrees. Yeah. Hey, Mike, I think you want to take a moment to thank our sponsors here.
Yeah, I do. So we've got a new sponsor, Drone Rescue Systems, and we had
Andreas Ployer, the CEO,
right, yes,
live from Austria, by the way.
And fantastic kind of career journey. We had him on the Full Tilt last week. Please take a look at that. And then we also got Promo Drone, L-Site, and A King Gump. We thank our sponsors for supporting this show and helping it grow. But we also thank you, the audience, because you've been helping us grow. So just remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and the notification bell, because the YouTube channel is off the charts now since we started, and it's all because of you. Thank you. All right, so back to Doom Mike. So
yeah, you're like Debbie Downer today, my friend.
No, I'm back and forth. Like, we'll be happier on the next article. So I'll call that balanced. So tech layoffs latest: Twitter, Lyft, Stripe, and others join the list of companies that are letting people go. So This is kind of a tech reckoning if you really think about it. This is actually the list that the article links to as its source. And if you go on this, you might even notice, Dawn, this is actually just an Airtable.
Fun fact.
Fun fact. So I would actually question the list's veracity if it's just somebody putting it into a spreadsheet. But anyway, I think the sign here, when you look at it, is it's everywhere in tech. So I think this is actually just kind of an echo of one of the things we talked about in the earlier episodes of this podcast, way back when we started in, August, is that without free money, 0% Fed rate, the world of tech is going to change. It has to. It has to become more optimized. It has to become more focused. You're no longer going to hear your uncle say, I have an app idea, and then see that app get funded. Remember those days? Yeah. And like you'd say to yourself, who's paying for this? Where's the money coming from? I think those questions are going to kind of disappear a little bit because you're going to have to answer to actual needs if you're going to survive what is basically a once in a lifetime kind of explosion of funding that this sector received. And you know what? It's a perfectly fine shift. I think we will see some even better startups in the next 5 years because they're going to really have to prove their mettle the way that the earlier startups did. You know, at one point it shifted from being really, really talented people who were already working at other companies coming and seeking funding to just a thing you go to school to learn how to do. You learn how to make the pitch deck to pitch to investors. So I think the ideas we were getting weren't as good. But even the companies that were successful, I think ultimately they scaled so quick because they didn't have to worry about the money, and now they do. So I think this is just a sign of a huge shift in the tech landscape, and anybody that lost their job, reach out to me. Maybe I could find you a place if you're in the right category. But yeah, I think it's a huge shift for tech, and I want to see what everybody else thinks.
Mike,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Maggie, if you don't mind, I wanted to kind of elaborate on this article a little bit and give some facts here. So basically, in October this year alone, there have been more than 12,100 layoffs across 88 separate companies. Just 4 days into November, there have already been 3,500 layoffs across 19 companies, and that doesn't include, by the way, Twitter. So I want to take a second and talk about Twitter because we love talking about Elon and what he's doing out there because there's always something to talk about when it comes to Elon Musk. And basically, Elon on Friday laid off about 50% of the Twitter staff. That's about 3,700 people. That wasn't included in that November stat. And Mike, as in background for this article, I was flipping around looking at some other articles as well, and people are referring to this as the snap. What am I talking about? If anybody out there is a Marvel fan from the Avengers, that's when Thanos snapped his fingers and half the world disappeared. They just went poof. So they're calling the Twitter layoffs the snap. I love that. Although it is horrible at the same time, like Mike said. And, Mike, to your point, I think one thing that intrigues me is, we're not seeing like these little startups necessarily, some of them, but we're talking about Amazon and Apple having hiring freezes on top of this. Okay. We're talking about Twitter. We're talking about Lyft, who cut 700 jobs during this period. We'll talk about Lyft here in a second in the next article. But these are pretty established tech companies that are laying people off right, left, and sideways. And so, Maggie, go ahead. Over to you.
Well, I was going to say, in this article, it really doesn't clarify who are the ones that are being laid off. Is it the support? Is it the engineers? Is it the sales? So I would find that interesting. But also, laying off doesn't always mean, or freezing doesn't always mean a negative thing. What it could mean is we need to think differently. And I think that's one of the reasons why Elon Musk, laid off 50, because they're used to doing something a system. And a lot of times when you're hiring new people, you want to, a lot of times you want to hire somebody that's outside of the company because they don't have these preconceived ideas of how the company needs to be run. Okay. So I think that that's, that's a good perspective. I think if I was Eli, I wouldn't want everyone behind me saying, hey, we're going to just do it the same way we've been doing it for, several years, forget this guy, he's in and out, So I think that that's not so bad. But I think we also need to start thinking of different ways. There are still a lot of jobs out there. And I think, the opportunity for us in the UAS industry is that I think we're forward thinkers. I think that we are seeing the possibilities of the technology, like in the metaverse and in the UAS, that we can see things that, number one, we have to identify what the skill set's going to be needed in the future. And if we're on top of that, we'll never be unemployed, ever. It's just a matter of those ones that are kind of stuck in the past and how they've been doing things. They don't want to change. And humans are typically like that. They like pattern. They like consistency over and over again. But again, I think we need to have that snap and say, hey, snap out of it. Things are changing and we need to stay on top of it. So that's my saying. That I'm done.
What's your take, Matthew?
Well, it's interesting because for years, tech has been given carte blanche, and people were just investing and investing and investing for over 20 years. People would just invest in anything that had an I in front of it or an E in front of it or had anything to do with tech. So, now all of a sudden they're facing this harsh reality, like we are actually a company and we do have to produce something and we do have to show profit and the investments are pulling back. So, I mean, for the first time now you see this, but what's really, really interesting to me is to see, is yet to come. I want to see what's going to happen in the next 3 months as a ramification of these massive layoffs. Look at already this morning, Elon Musk is already trying to hire back, some of these people that he left, that he just cut.
He's like canned on a Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, he's trying to bring these people back, and it's like, did you really think this through? This is the first time that they've had to do this in a they've had to do it. And I think as some of these companies that we talked about, big tech, these were first to market companies. These were companies that really had a massive breakthrough in a big area, and they've gotten away with a lot of mistakes that they were able to make that normal manufacturing companies, service industry companies, aerospace, airlines, transportation could not get away with. Their investors would just not tolerate it. So to see this now start to play out, to start to see this shift right now, being first to market is not always great, because if you don't maintain that edge and turn that into something profitable, turn that like the whole metaverse discussion that we just had, who's going to be right behind you, gobbling that up, leveraging from the mistakes that you made and making it happen. And it's just a fascinating time. And I think the next 3 months are going to tell a lot.
That's absolutely one of the, I guess, arguments against Facebook being able to have a monopoly over it, is they actually have to invest so much more than the innovator to produce the same thing. And ultimately, I think open protocols will win whatever metaverse war there is, because then companies will build on top of that open layer. Whereas Facebook is trying to say that they can make the case on the current layer. But like the other thing that you were talking about that was so super interesting is just that free ride that these tech companies have kind of gotten. We think about Uber, it wasn't profitable, and it's still questionable as to whether the last quarter was. Like, it seems like some funny math there. So this was a company that was basically built almost completely on life support, right? No organic actual revenue, or not enough organic revenue to offset the organic losses. And I think we're also in a world that is splitting geopolitically, and supply chain suddenly matters, and suddenly real things have real value again, right? They have a lot higher value than what we can create out of thin air, which is almost everything in tech and software related
Yeah, Mike,
tech.
just looking at the war right now with Ukraine and Russia, and again, like you had said, the political shift. I mean, that's all going to be, at least the political shift, you're going to see a lot of that within the 3 months. You see interest rates going up. That's another reason why people are hesitant to invest, because they are kind of wait to see, where the market is going to go. So I think there's a lot of questions right now, and I think that's why you're seeing what you're seeing in the layoffs. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think this will forge great companies, to be honest. I think
100%.
we're going to see who actually can survive the transition, and those companies will be more resilient. They will be our General Electrics. They will be, these giant companies that you can't even imagine going out of existence. And also, though, sometimes it's hard for everybody right now, but there will be, basically new lands for startups to actually seize, because incumbents can't just use first mover advantage anymore. They have to use actual value to make the difference now. So it's a big shift, though. It's a big shift. I lived and grew up in the peak of my career during what was the free money era of tech. So I wonder what this will mean. I think we're just at the beginning. So we got one last article. This is a tech hopeful article, a nice incremental progress in the right direction article that Dawn found for us. So what do we got here, Dawn?
All right. Well, last week, just a reminder, if you missed that episode, to subscribe to the full crew and check out all of them on our YouTube channel. But we had the Electric Lady podcaster on here, and we were talking about a whole bunch of different things, but including the fact that kind of to follow Mike's previous article, Ford and Volkswagen just completely hung up their program, their autonomous vehicle program, shuttered the doors on a $3.6 billion investment. And just, they're just investing now in automation for the cars they already have, like maybe specific features like self parking or something, but not full up autonomous ride shares like what you're seeing here with Waymo. So Waymo is one of the companies that they're just all in, right? And they've already been doing uncrewed, underline that, uncrewed, driverless robo-taxi services in downtown Phoenix. Okay, they started with having what they call this human safety operator on board back in March, and by August, that human safety operator was out of the vehicle. They have these trusted testers. You have to apply online to become one, probably sign your life away literally to get in that car, but people are using them. And this expansion here, it's really interesting because, underline again, the first service like this to and from an airport. So when you think about companies like Lyft that we just talked about, that just laid off about 700 people, had not such a great quarter. This is a big chunk of their total rideshare revenue, right? 10.2% of Lyft's rideshare revenue is to and from an airport. And what's really interesting, two fun facts about this. Number one, no surge pricing, everybody. Amen and hallelujah. I mean, when I was at AUVSI Exponential, we went to a party down at what they used to call downtown Disney. I forget what they call it today. And at 10 o'clock, that place shuts down. So we had left the party a little early. We hired our Uber. It said it was coming for $22. Okay, 10 o'clock hit. All these people started coming. Guess what? Our ride declined, and then to get another ride, it was $75 to get home.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm telling you, and everybody, like there was like 100 people now at this one little place trying to get a ride. Everybody's paying $75 to $100 to go 2 miles. It was like ridiculous. Brutal. So thank you Waymo, no surge pricing, amen and hallelujah. And then the other really cool thing, everybody, they're driving around Jaguar I-Paces, okay? That's the car you're going to be riding in. Like, that just sounds cool to me. Jaguar, hello. So I'm loving what Waymo is doing. And by the way, they have over 700 vehicles in their fleet, and that includes some trucks. They're doing some other things too. But they're also expanding some robo-taxi services to LA here shortly. So really exciting times to see this happening. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Matthew.
Yeah, I love the article because, you see a real trend now. What they've done is they've picked very specific routes that would come out of the city or go back to the city from a particular point. So they were able to nail it down. They were able to really work out the technology and what's going to work, what's not going to work on these specific routes. And they probably have predefined routes from certain segments of town. So I think now that we have it, now we have something out there that's really happening in this space, you're going to start to see like you have breakthrough technology. This was a big breakthrough. And then they added they added all the nice features to it. But now you're going to start to see this incremental technology begin to blossom from this. And it's going to get better. It's going to get competitive. And then it's going to get really good. And you're just going to see all these new things, new routes being added to the services. And again, it's just driving that level of competition because there are other people out there, other companies out there that are just waiting for this to happen, that were just waiting for that green light. And I just think it's really telling. It's a telling article, and it was a great choice.
Well, I think that Jaguar looked more like a Prius to me. Okay, I'm just saying.
It's their lower end model.
I'm just saying, and I didn't quite understand when I was reading the article until the very end. It was saying that you have to sign up, like Dawn said, you have to sign up. You're going to be a pre-signed up customer or passenger. But I was curious about how the routes. I didn't really quite understand. Matt, when you were saying pre-designated routes, are they going to the airport? Are they leaving the airport, going to their personal homes? I wasn't quite clear on what that said. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Rivian is a company that is competitive with the Tesla right now, and it's in. The reason I'm aware of them is because I'm moving to Illinois, and they have their plant in Bloomington, Illinois. And they manufacture right now mostly trucks. And one of the interesting things is in Texas is they have a truck, an AI truck from IKEA down to the port in Texas. And so they go back and forth. So that's a designated route. But how are they going to do it with, again, passengers that have their personal homes or offices that they want to go to? Did it even clarify on the routes and how they, if it is all automatic and there's not really a, quote, driver, how they're determining the routes or how are they getting to their destination?
Yeah, and that was an assumption on my part, because when I look at the technologies involved and how mature they are or not mature they are, you have a very specific geography. You have, Phoenix, and I'm sure that, this segment of town, once you get out of there, you're on a route that's going to take you there. If you're in this section of town, you're going to get through the small, the small streets and so forth, and you're going to be put on this route. So it makes it a lot easier having a very, a very defined geography like that. So that's why, to me, it was an assumption of why they were able to launch it so quickly, because they were able to work out the bugs, as opposed to just having a big free-for-all where everybody can, you can drive wherever you want or have the vehicle drive you wherever you want. There's a lot more to it because a lot of different things, unexpected twists and turns and traffic patterns and things like that would emerge, making it a lot more challenging.
So Maggie, I was going to say, they're not super explicit, but I just pulled the article back up, and basically they're talking about, different types of road user behaviors around the airport, having to navigate the gift curbs and passengers and cars and big buses and Ubers and Lyfts. And they talk about, I think the pickup point is near this SkyTrain, and that they don't have to go on the highway but they do have to navigate the light rail system and quote unquote exacerbated traffic congestion on the way to the airport. So that makes me think that, I mean, they're out there, man. They're on the normal roads in downtown. Now, is it to a person's house? I would assume so, but I think almost like when you get out of the airport and you hop on one of those vans or something like that, a shuttle, they have, I think, a designated pickup spot like an Uber or Lyft would. It's going to be one location. It's not going to be probably wherever. But maybe, but unclear. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I think our friend Ramon is texting me about his Waymo driverless ride at the Phoenix airport.
Oh, what did he say? Hi, Ramon.
So he said they had the opportunity. It was good, geeky fun. So...
well, ask him if they dropped him off at his house.
All right. Well, probably not because his house is in Tijuana. But
then,
maybe the hotel.
But to a hotel or somewhere.
Yeah. So let's assume a hotel. To me, that was not verified, but that was the assumption here is that the protected route would probably be to known designations like designated areas like airport hotels. I was just at LAX, and they have, like the row there, like the Hilton, the Marriott, etc. It'd be easy for those places to provide a lane or a pickup drop-off area, so we at least know the zone in which these vehicles would be driving in. And that's kind of what I like about this so much is that I think too much of driverless cars was sold as trying to chew the whole steak at once. We're going to have these things be able to handle any environment, and they're safer than humans, and the truth is that they're not yet, because we're really good at picking out edge cases. That's something that our brains developed over millions of years, and I think that that Bloomberg article that I brought up, I think on the last one, they disparagingly talked about lanes on the highway that would be dedicated for self-driving cars as just crappier trains. And I don't view it that way. I think having designated routes means that we don't have to pay for rail infrastructure. We could use current infrastructure and just paint some lines around it. And that in itself is better than a train. Clearly they had never worked on the rail, whoever wrote that article. But this is what makes this so magical to me. This is a designated area where we could actually test and expand and build the skills of these driverless autonomous vehicles so they eventually can actually operate in all environments. And this is probably one of the most valuable places they can be deployed for that purpose, right? And keep our drivers and passengers safe at the same time.
I just want to say I was so disappointed last year at the Consumer Electronics Show, CES in Vegas, because they really hyped up check out Tesla's autonomous cars, ride the little loop between buildings. Because if you've ever been there, it's like this huge sprawling area, and there's this underground tunnel. Well, we're all excited. We get in, and this, I guess, human whatever operator, some dude in the driver's seat, and we're like, why are you here? This is supposed to be fully autonomous. He's like, yeah, and he was basically as far as I could tell, he was driving the car. I don't think he was just sitting there. And I'm like, so I already have my own Tesla, and I'm like, so I'm riding in this tunnel with this guy for what reason right now? But I love that Waymo is actually doing it, and CES, that's a challenge to you. How about we get some real autonomous cars in that tunnel this year? That would be amazing.
So we got a comment from Ramon, and we also have one from Rob Cranston from before I got to get to. So Ramon said, I rode a Waymo in Phoenix this year. It works the same way as an Uber. You have to download an app, set the address. The limitation is in a geofence, so a designated area. It won't let you set an address outside of it. If your destination is outside the geofence, it will say they can't take you there. So basically, I guess they're doing very detailed mapping and environment testing in a small zone. But it seems like the zone is more open than what I was describing, which would be a designated route. So interesting.
That makes a lot of sense because they're still on leaning towards the safe side. And just to comment on Dawn, in regards to the guy that was sitting there, we had the same 2 years ago in North Texas where there were the smart cars or whatever, but there was somebody sitting there, and they didn't interact or interfere with the car, but they were there just in case. And I think it was more of making the passengers feel safe. Oh, well, okay, if something happens, this person will, interfere and take over the wheel. And technically they are, but really the need for that is very slim, because our sensors are getting more and more sophisticated, where they can sense things even before a human can sense that there's going to be a collision or something like that.
Let me be more cynical and say that person's there to absorb the lawsuit.
No, yes. I'm sure it's still the company, but... So, Mike, what was Cranston's comment, Rob?
So exciting he was talking in terms of the NASA thing. Exciting progress. Our concern is the slow pace within P3's risk adoption and government consortium of buyers. I think SANDAG. Don't know what all these acronyms mean. Of RFP, I know what that means. Scoped unmanned taxi and infrastructure pilot timelines. So
yeah, a lot of government agencies are trying to break away from that. They have what they call outside the fence facilities, where they're actually working with startups. They're working with commercial organizations that may not be on GSA schedule or FedRAMP certified. So they're making strides. Yes, it is slow. It's still not where it should be. I totally agree with that. But they're getting there. There's hope. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you guys probably all saw. I mean, this could have been an article unto itself, because there was an article on this. Air Force's AFWorks announced their new autonomy prime. Like Agility Prime, which has been focused on the eVTOL. So that's exciting, just more generically autonomy. So I know they were looking for a location to host kind of like a building or something. It was part of that article. I don't know where that's going to be, but I know they have a number of bidders for that. So we'll keep an eye on that as well.
Well, it's
Air
been
Force
wonderful.
Research. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Go ahead.
We're having a great time talking, but we are coming up on time. So, Dawn, can you tell us what's coming up this week?
Oh boy, so much happening this week. So Wednesday we have Defense Solutions on the Dawn of Drones. Their CEO Zohar Zalakmi. So check that out when you think about the things that need to protect our skies. Counter UAS is one of those things, and Defend are experts in that. And then on Thursday, Maggie is going to take over for me in Clubhouse completely. Do it at a special time, 9 a.m. Mountain, which is 10 Central for Maggie. And Rex Alexander, if you don't know Rex, just a world-renowned expert on vertiports, heliports, drone ports. It's going to be a spectacular conversation. Rex is on the Dawn of Drones next Wednesday as well. And then next week we've got some amazing guests. Monday on the crew, next Monday, we have Lisa Ellman from Hogan Levels and the Commercial Drone Alliance, and Chris Lewis from Vets to Drones together on this show. So that should be exciting. And then we have a Full Tilt Leadership podcast with Anna Helander from Airspace Link. And just an amazing human being and co-founder of that incredible company. So much going on. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, exciting as always. And just remember, if you like this conversation, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Or if you like to get angry, just hit the notification bell. So we'll be happy to see you. I want to thank our guests, Matthew and Maggie, for joining us today and bringing up some great topics. I want to thank our audience for joining us. As always, you've helped me and Dawn grow a business out of thin air. So thank you for the support. And again, thank you to our sponsors, Akin Gump Drone Rescue Systems, L-Site, and Promo Drone for making this show possible. And that's it for this week. We are out here.